Hi, I'm Daniel Stahl. I'm a producer on World of Warcraft.
Hey, my name is Morgan Day. I'm the lead encounter designer on World of Warcraft.
So I know that you guys have both worked at Blizzard for a while, and you have really interesting backstories of how that happened.
Yeah.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about your background, your education, how you ended up in the video game industry, and eventually how you ended up at Blizzard.
Yeah, tell us.
So just your life story, go.
Oh, do you want to go first? Because I'm going to talk.
To biography.
Because I'm going to talk for like 20 minutes, so you can go first.
Wow, that's a lot. First of all, I have not been at Blizzard for a long time. I've been there for 2 years this month. But getting into the industry, getting into games, it seems like a common theme, a common story is at some point in my past, I really wanted to be in video games. And I think it was the movie Tron, to be honest. I saw the movie Tron, and I thought to myself, here is Flynn. He lives above an arcade, and that's his job. I want to do that. I really want to do that. And I think I was in the 3rd grade when that happened. And so just decided that I wanted to play as many games as I could. My family loved board gaming.
So when people said, what do you want to be when you grow up? You knew from the 3rd grade.
I knew from the 3rd, yeah, that's exactly what I said.
That's
I'm going to be Flynn
to be
from
honest.
Tron.
So I had no idea.
And it got really boring because I would go to the back of the class after school where the Apple IIc computer, like
Sure.
one of those apples was, and I started I found a basic book, and it's like, I want to program a video game, and I would make me against the master control program, me versus the MCP, and I had to guess the codes. And so I wrote a program that said, what is the code? And then I would type in the code. And I'm like, okay, this is the most boring game ever. I already know the answer to this game. But long story short, that passion of wanting to be in video games and wanting to work on these types of things really led me to seek out what would I possibly do to become in the video game industry. And it turns out I didn't have any good plan whatsoever. I just played lots of games and started networking Doom in my grandfather's mortgage company, and come in, before they all got there, and then as soon as they opened up their terminal to start working, it's like they're in deathmatch mode. They don't realize it. I'm like, just move. Like, I'm going to shoot you now. And that led to this desire to where are game companies? Like, what kind of game companies are out there? And so built a website because I loved playing card games. Talked to Wizards of the Coast and said, hey, you got any jobs? Ended up going to Microsoft saying, hey, you got any jobs? Ended up going to Cryptic Studios and say, hey, you got any jobs? And then finally, during that entire process, I had been applying to Blizzard. And I had been saying, Blizzard, I love World of Warcraft. Every place I've ever worked, that was a common thread. People loved playing World of Warcraft. You could always find World of Warcraft players. I loved it myself. And so after many, many years, finally get the phone call, and it's like, hey, Dan, would you like to come work at Blizzard and work on World of Warcraft? So just kind of a dream come true, those sort of stories. And it was really not because I went to World of Warcraft University. It's just because you have a passion, you want to do something, and you just pour your heart into it, and you do whatever's necessary to find those opportunities.
Totally. So you've only been at Blizzard for 2 years.
2 years.
I'm on the other end of the spectrum. I've been at Blizzard for about 12, going on 13. The whole time I've worked on World of Warcraft in some regard. I consider myself almost like a Blizzard baby boomer, right? Like when World of Warcraft came out, the company, their expectations were blown away, right? World of Warcraft was humongous. It was amazing. And they basically were quickly hiring people to try to fill for those roles. So I have played World of Warcraft for closer to 15 years, even though it hasn't been out for that long. I actually have been playing it since the alpha, like the original Friends and Family alpha. I think when I started
planes running.
I think when I first started playing, the level cap was like 10, or maybe it was even lower, like 6 or something. Like it was really, really low. But for me, much like you, I started playing video games basically when I was like 10, right? And I had 6K modem, right? I had dial-up modem. I started playing video games. My very first video game I played was actually at a friend's house, and it was called Warcraft 2. He had the internet, he had a computer, he had Warcraft 2, and I started to play it, and was like, this is the coolest thing ever. Like, I cannot believe how amazing this is. I was really, really young. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. Ended up getting a computer, or my parents had a computer that I borrowed, and we had internet at the time, so I started to play Warcraft 2. So that was the first game I ever played. Yep. And from there, I was just a huge Blizzard fan from then on out, right?
Yeah,
like,
totally.
I actually had you know, this was a long time ago, before the internet was like cool, right? Before everyone used the internet, before you had your internet at your fingertips, right?
Yeah.
So I had my first LAN party when I was 12. Like I had met all these people on the internet. We were
How'd
playing
you
Warcraft
get
2
your parents
together.
to talk you into that?
So that's funny. I didn't have to talk my parents into it. My parents had to talk my internet friends' parents into letting them come to our house, right? Because it was
creepy
right. It was
doing?
weird, right? At the time, it was like, what? Wait, what? You've met someone on the what? And how do you know them? And why are they calling me right now? And you want to drive
Exactly.
across the country to
Yeah.
Virginia to do a LAN party? Like, what is a LAN party, right?
Yeah.
So, there was about 8 of us that were playing. On it, we set up a bunch of cardboard tables or card tables, whatever they're called, and put up all of our computers, and we just played like on a local network. I forget the name of the networking back then, but they were all daisy chained together, right? Like that one before you had routers and stuff like that. So from a very young age, I knew I loved video
Direct
games.
Connect, I think that's like
It was I don't remember actually, but from a very young age, I knew like I love video games. Blizzard in particular. I fell in love with all their games. I played a ton of StarCraft. I played really competitively in StarCraft.
Yeah.
But like you, I never considered it a career path, right? Like
just something you wanted to do.
You can't go
something
to
you wanted to be.
at the time, right? You couldn't go to school to learn how to make video games. It wasn't even an option. So, I went into I finished high school. I went into just the family business. My dad was an electrician. I started working with him, and I was playing a ton of World of Warcraft, and we were in a really I think we were a really good raiding guild at the time. So this was around the time of Blackwing Lair came out, and if you were raiding around Blackwing Lair, there were some bugs, there were some issues that came up. So Blizzard just put out like a call to arms for, hey, we need quality assurance testers.
Come help us test.
Come help us test our raids. If you're familiar with raids and dungeons, come work for us and put in bugs. So I was living in Virginia at the time, and I was like, well, I have a little bit of money. I drove across the country. I didn't have an interview. I didn't realize how crazy I was being at this point, but I just drove across the country.
So you literally just saw the ad and you're like, I'm driving across the country.
I was just like, I can do that. I'm going to go there
Why
and let them
not?
know
Like,
I can
let's go.
do this.
Get in the Studebaker, Fozzie. Let's
exactly.
go.
It didn't make sense. Like, I was just kind of a young kid. I was just coming out of high school not too long ago. I was working a bit, still kind of trying to figure things out. So drove across the country, put in an application, and got the job. So I started to work in quality assurance. That was 12 years ago. And then just have been working on World of Warcraft in some capacity since then, and just loving every moment. I still play a ton of it. I'm really, really excited about all the things I'm working on still.
That's one thing I really loved about coming to work on Team 2, Team 2 World of Warcraft is I expected the team to play a lot of World of Warcraft. They always talked about, you got to play what you love, and you got to build a game that you want to be able to play yourself. But I really didn't grok how much the team actually plays, and they play a ton. A ton. Not at work necessarily, but they play but they do play a ton. And it's great because water cooler talk is what you'd expect it to be. It's like you open up your email in the morning, and it's not just here's what you need to do for the day. It's like, hey, I was in the Broken Shore last night, and by the way, it's like those conversations are just coming from
play. The number of
play.
times I've been, like you said, at the water cooler, in the break room, in the cafeteria, and someone's like, oh man, so we're doing Coming to Shavara, we're wiping on it, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, let me tell you about some of your logs, tell me what you're doing, maybe I can help you out. Like, that's a conversation that's pretty common.
Coven, huh? So, what kind of educational background do you have? I know you said you went to high school. I know you were in a position where like video game design wasn't really a thing. That's pretty new.
It wasn't even an option.
College type things. What type of education do you have that brought you here, or was it more like dynamic skills that were able to be translated into game design, game production?
Education and video games has changed so much over the last years. Back when I was going to be Flynn from Tron, there was no real schooling, and it felt like if I were to go get a computer science degree, technology was advancing so fast. By the time I got out of school, was that even going to be relevant anymore? And so, a philosophy that I sort of took was, well, passion and knowledge of games can make up for that, but I also felt there needed to be this level of creativity, and that you needed to be creating and understanding video games. I think I always heard my friends say things like, well, I play tons of video games, maybe I should be in video games. But I think it's more than just playing. Like, playing's great, but I think you have to really get your mindset around why did they build it this way, and what makes this game good. And you really become a critic in a way. You become a critic of what makes good, fun gameplay, what makes a dungeon fun, what makes, questing fun. And so when I started to play games, I felt like I was doing it with that in mind. Like, I was doing it in the mindset of, I wanted to, in the absence of an education, I wanted to educate myself on what kind of games were out there, what were people building, and why were they making the decisions that they were making. And then when any opportunity came up to create something, and thank you, by the way, for whoever made things like the Aurora tool set or any mod ability that's out there, because I want to say that modding and creating in that world, any world, gives you so much experience that's valuable in building games, that it's that passion to create that I hope, if I were going back to school now and I were going to go back and say, hey, I want to get a degree in video games, that's the kind of thing that they'd be teaching me. They would be teaching me how to be critical at thinking about games, how to not just think about what's a fun idea or what's a fun story, but to go deeper than that. Like, what makes this replayable? What makes me want to play this for a long time? And so, I'm a little bit jealous. Like, we see, applicants interviewing and sending in their resumes, and they have so much more opportunity, I think, now, because they are able to learn things that weren't available 10, 20 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I was saying earlier, I have a high school degree, and at the time it was like, well, my passion is video games, but I didn't even realize it was an option for a career path, right? So I kind of found out that it was
Did you not
even
see
an option.
Tron?
I get. If only I had taken it, I had seen what you saw in Tron. I was just like, this is cool. I like the disc. That's fun.
Didn't realize it was a match.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, I just followed my passion in that regard, like you're talking about. Like, if I had known that there were, schooling out there that I could go to pursue this passion of mine, I think I would have absolutely taken that opportunity. It's an interesting thing too, like you said, like, if you ask people around Blizzard, like, oh, where did you come from? Did you go, what's your background? It's from all walks of life, which is really interesting.
So many different things. Like, oh, I was a history major, or, I have a degree in philosophy, or
several lawyers on the team.
Yeah,
some marine biologists, like all over the spectrum, right?
It really is. But there's a common thread, right? Like, the common thread is this entertainment, and it's not just the games, it's community. It's wanting to play with others, wanting to be part of a group of individuals that really understands why this is fun and why it's fun to play together, and it makes a lot of difference.
So what kind of advice would you give someone who wanted to get into the video game industry, specifically wanted to work at Blizzard? Because I feel like I see that a lot. Everybody plays video games, but any iota of wanting to work in the video game industry, it's Blizzard's the dream job.
Right, yeah.
So what kind of advice would you give them? We'll say they're high school aged.
Yeah, high school age. And don't give up. There's more time than you think if you're in high school. I wish I could go back to myself and say, you don't have to be at the end of your career by the 12th grade, right? Like, there's time for you. But on a more practical note, I would say, be passionate about something that you love. Turn it into a hobby. Turn it into something where in your spare time you are putting energy and life into something, right? Whether that be modding, whether that be a community, whether that be into streaming, like, whatever it is that you love to do, that's going to shine through. It's going to shine through almost anything else. And also being a subject matter expert. Like, one of the big questions that you'll ask is, well, do you play World of Wacraft? Yeah. And that matters. It matters more than you think, right? Knowing your subject matter is so critical to being able to talk intelligently about, like I was saying earlier, not just, oh, that was fun, I loved it.
Right.
Like, that's go deeper than that. Please go deeper than that, right? Like, tell me why. Tell me what made it good. What would you change? If you could fix something, what would you fix? If you could add something, what would you add? That type of critical thinking really helps teams. It helps collaboration. It helps with iteration. Just people signing up for alpha and beta, like, it's fun to be you became a tester, right? So you drove across the country to test, and at the end of the day, you just didn't say, yeah, that was fun, that was good, right? Like, there's a role to that, because you're providing quality assurance. You're saying, you know what, that actually wasn't what I expected, and here's why. Like, that type of feedback. If you're looking to get into the games industry, it's not just about fun. It's not just about being the best player in the world. It's not about, going to the best school or doing the best thing. Those things can help in different ways, but the core of you needs to be in it to win it.
Yeah. I mean, you were saying something there. The modding tools are really exciting. Like, it depends on what you want to get into also, right? Like, I'm a designer, you're a producer.
Good point.
There are artists. I know a lot of people who live by the ABCs is what they say, always be creating, right? Like, there's
always be creating.
Always be working on something, always be following your passion, build your skills. Another thing that you mentioned, like, one of the great things about a lot of the schooling programs now are the group projects. Like, you don't realize until you get into into what we're doing how important those skills of collaboration and working with each other, and not only just having strong opinions, but being able to communicate why you feel that way, or why something is important. And that discussion that happens is, those are something that we call soft skills that are incredibly valuable. Just sitting on your computer all day and making mods is really great. You're going to learn a lot, but there's a lot of other skills that are incredibly valuable. And like you mentioned, in terms of, like, all right, I have a goal, I'm going to work at Blizzard. There are a ton of paths that will lead you there, right? Everyone that you talk to at the company will probably have a different story. Like, the path that I took was, I'm going to get my foot in the door. I'm going to get my foot in the door anywhere I can. It doesn't matter where it's going to be. I just want to get my foot in the door. And then, I love this so much. I'm just going to continue to work at it and do as good as I can, to be the best that I can be. There's other people who might have different paths, like you, where you worked in the industry and you got your job starting. Actually, where was your first games job? Yeah,
I started at Wizards of the Coast. I actually made board games on my own, like talking about always be creating. Ended up at Microsoft working on Xbox 360, and ended up just continually trying to find different jobs in the industry that would lead me on the path towards working on World of Warcraft.
Yeah, exactly.
But you can, like you said, you can approach it from different angles.
Those couldn't be more different, right?
Yeah, very, very, very different, right? Like, I didn't say I knew I wanted to be in production. I knew I wanted to take that route. So you can be a lot of different things at Blizzard, right? Like, I always talk about the fact that you can be a photographer, you can be a lawyer, you can work in so many different types of departments and still be in the games industry. Like, we have accountants. We they're and what's awesome about that is, like, I'm thinking of a specific lawyer on our team, and that's not Ian, by the way. Sorry, Ian. You're awesome. But it's like, even Kevin plays World of Warcraft, right? And it's like, he still loves the game. He's passionate about Blizzard, but he didn't go to game school. He went to law school, and thank goodness he did, right? Like, because he'd be a terrible lawyer if he didn't. So there's so many different things you can do, right? And still be a part of Blizzard, still be a part of this phenomenon that I really think is awesome.
Yeah.
So, for everybody who doesn't know, I know you are an encounter designer.
Yeah.
You're a producer. Can you explain kind of what your jobs entail?
Yeah, for sure. So, with encounter design in World of Warcraft, my focus is often on dungeons. It's on raids. We're the ones working with the bosses that are in the raids, the trash that's in the raids. But on top of that, we also touch things like in the outdoor world, right? If you have a quest boss that has some cool things that they're doing to you, our team, or the encounter designers, also work very closely with features like Islands Expeditions, which are a new feature for Battle for Azeroth, which is really awesome. One of the cool things about it is there's all these unique ecologies that will appear on the islands, depending on the island that you show up at, right? Yeah. So encounter designers also help craft what those creatures are doing. So that's kind of where our focus is every day. Is I like to say, like, we artists make the really awesome dragon that looks super rad, and our team is what makes the dragon, shoot the big flame breath, or decides if it's even going to shoot a flame breath, right? And then you have, the effects artists that add the effects to the awesome breath. There's so many different elements that go into making World of Warcraft that it's kind of awesome.
Talking a little bit about production, World of Warcraft in particular is a massive project. There are so many different disciplines that go into creating a virtual world, right? This world has locations that you can go to. There are physics involved. There's a lot of math involved. There are all the things that you see, but there's also all the mechanics behind the scenes that allow us to log in from everywhere around in the world. So with such a complex project and so many different disciplines, production helps with communication and bringing people together. So let's take Island Expeditions as an example, right? Island Expeditions, you need someone to make the physical islands that you're going to play on. There is new weather effects that you need to spool up. There are, like you mentioned, creatures that need to go on there. There's designs. There's so many different people involved. It would kind of scare some people, like how many people actually it takes to build some of these features. And production is there to help the different teams that don't sit together all the time, they don't talk together all the time, bring people together so that we're all on the same page about what is it that we're doing.
I'm hearing the Office Space guy in my head. But I know it's so much more than that, but I'm a people person. I help people talk. I know it's so much more than that. Like, when I think of... Not only that, when I think of production, and I work in design, I come up with crazy ideas. Yeah. The thing that I always like to talk about where design's relationship with production is, this is a partnership. It's my job to come up with crazy ideas, and it's your job. Yeah, exactly. It's our job to come up with crazy ideas and just be like, all right, what if we did all these crazy things? And then it's production's job to say, cool, you can do that.
You can do that.
And if you want to do that, this is actually what it means. This is how you accomplish these things. Yeah. This is what we might have to, adjust in terms of like, all right, this is what we're currently planning to do. If you want to do that, we can, but that means, this is what it means that we might not be able to do.
And we could ship in 2075. So it's like that relationship, that collaboration, no matter what your role on the team, it's such a required component, right? And being able to talk to each other, having fun together, being able to discuss the game together, but also it does take a lot of different disciplines, a lot of different expertise, and a lot of specialists, a lot of different aspects to, I like to think of this necessarily wasn't at Blizzard, but I remember there was a gentleman that I worked with, and his entire sole purpose was to calculate the properties of light. And I'm like, that is such a specific role on a video game. Like you're literally the mathematician that's dealing with light. Okay, cool. Like that's awesome. We need that. So amazing.
So is there anything else you want to tell anybody at home about whether it's working for Blizzard or maybe something you're really excited about for Battle for Azeroth? Yeah. Any last words before we say goodbye?
Well, we just announced the launch date of
August
Battle
14th.
for Azeroth, August 14th, so we're looking forward to that. For anyone out there that's looking to get, that they're watching this and they're saying to themselves, man, I would really love to do that, but I just don't know, right? I'm just not sure. You don't have to make a decision right now. You don't have to make it. This is something that you can get into this industry at any age and at any time. I don't think you have to start at a certain age. And honestly, just follow your passion. Like do something that you really care about. That I can't stress enough. That matters so much. Please just be yourself. Be yourself, please.
Yes, along with what Daniel said, just I love our community so much. I love World of Warcraft. I love trying to create things that people hopefully have a really great time with, and it's just such a fantastic relationship I think that we have with our community, where they, I think we're in a unique position where we've been making this game for a long time, and a lot of our community has grown with us, and I just love seeing that passion in our community. I love working and hearing feedback and working with them, and it's just such an awesome, unique honor to be able to be working on a game like this and to have a community and share it with them.
So much mutual respect back and forth. So thank you so much.
Well, Well, thank you guys for sitting down. I really appreciate it. Just give everybody a little goodbye. We'll wrap this up.
Goodbye, farewell, take care.
Thank you so
See you in Battle for Azeroth.
Peace.